Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our program on Dawah-English, and it's for the topic of Imam Ali's alayhi salam, his peace be upon him, his legacy of justice. Lessons for establishing justice in society. So in this is a depiction of our holy Imam Ali alayhi salam with the Dhul-Fiqar sword in his right hand, and he is charging. But the context of this image is he is establishing justice. He's rooting out injustice, and he's establishing justice. Okay, so first we want to start off with the question of what is justice? Okay, there are two words for justice in the Quran. There may be others, but these are two main ones. The first one is al-adl, okay, or the concept of al-adala. So al-adl means just, and adala means justice. It is derived from the root word in Arabic, the ayn, the dal, and the lam, and it means to equalize, to straighten, or balance. The Arabic phrase, وَضْعُ الشَّيْءِ فِي مَحَلِّهِ, putting the thing in its rightful place. This is a concept in Islam. Putting the thing in its right place, that is justice. I want you to keep that in mind. It refers to internal quality of the soul and the principle of moral rectitude. It refers to integrity and is a requirement for being a witness in legal affairs. If a person is not just, they cannot be a witness. And a person who has integrity is a person who is free from committing major sins. But he also or she also does not persist in committing minor sins. They're going to commit sins, but they're not persistent in it. That person would be adil. He'd be just. He's a person that can be relied upon for witnessing in a legal matter. And al-qist, the second word, derived from the root qaf, sin, and ta. It refers to equity, fairness, and giving each person their due share. This form of justice relates to societal affairs in governing, judging, weights and measure. Like if you're going to weigh something to sell it, it must be weighed correctly. Okay? And also giving people their rights and so on. This is what al-qist refers to. Now the image here is an image of a scale. In Arabic it's called mizan. Okay? And this scale is a scale that has been in tradition for thousands upon thousands of years, and it implies a balance and order that's based upon justice. Okay? And so this is what we have from justice. Now with that understanding, we need to know what is the opposite of justice. Okay? So there are two words for what we call injustice, which is the opposite of justice. In the Quran we have al-zulm. Al-zulm, which can be translated as injustice. It has the dha, the lam, and the mim. It means putting a thing in a place other than its own. Whether this is by deficit or excess or by departing from the proper time or place, it is acting in a way that violates the rights of others or the laws of God. Now what's so important about this concept of zulm is, if you remember when we talked about al-adl, right? Al-adl, which today, even in this country of America, we are still, those who have been wronged, still trying to receive justice, right? In other words, what was ours was put in its wrong place, was taken away, which is injustice. Justice is you must put it back in its right place. This still has not happened in this country for most Americans. So zulm is what this is, when you take things out of its place. Al-jawr is the second word, and al-jawr, which means tyranny, it is to deviate or turn aside from the right course. path or goal. It is departure from justice and equity. Now, while dhulm is general wrongdoing, al-jawr, or jawr in this case, specifically implies a straying from the straight path of fairness. In a political context, it refers to a ruler who deviates from the law to oppress his subjects. The act of inclining toward one side unfairly, such as a judge showing bias. This is all part of al-jawr, and this is tyranny. Right here we have the depiction of Yazid ibn Muawiyah as the epitome of injustice, of tyrannical rule. But we must go further because we don't want to speak in a vacuum. So let's give some examples of injustice in legal affairs. President George W. Bush. It's imperative that our religion is very clear. Our religion is not speaking in platitudes. We have to apply it to reality. So President George W. Bush, there were news outlets that reported that the Bush administration had fired 8 U.S. attorneys. And critics called this as politically motivated dismissals, undermining the independence of the Justice Department. Reports highlighted allegations that the administration's close ties to Halliburton, which was a big firm during the that was getting a lot of contracts during the Iraq War, and Blackwater, which is one of the largest in the world, led to corruption, overcharging, and mismanagement, raising concerns about injustice in federal contracting. The Patriot Act and Patriot Act 2 greatly eroded Americans' rights through mass surveillance after 9/11. President Barack Obama, we want to make this very clear. Injustice doesn't matter what party you're on. It's irrelevant. Injustice is prevalent regardless of party. President Barack Obama, we have reports that major outlets during his presidency reported that Obama continued and expanded the NSA surveillance programs, raising civil liberties concerns. The Washington Post coverage noted that under Obama, the federal government faced criticism for insufficient action on systemic racism. Many of us saw this. And police violence. If you remember, when Eric Garner was brutally killed by being suffocated by a chokehold, Trayvon Martin killed by somebody who was trying to be a wannabe peace officer, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, and others, right? During those criminal actions which the media put out there, we could see that the President of the United States was not strong on this type of crime, even though this crime was affecting, in particular, Black Americans. People thought that Barack Obama, being Black, that he would support these issues. But we learned that the injustice doesn't matter about your color or who you are. Injustice is prevalent. President Joe Biden. So December 2024, President Biden issued a full and unconditional pardon for his son, Hunter Biden. It covered federal gun convictions that he was charged with. His son was also charged with multiple federal tax evasions and any federal crimes that he committed basically an 11-year period, 2014 to 2024, he was basically exonerated. Now, this was Joe Biden's son. And when I read this, I see to myself that there's a famous tradition of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, in which he said, because the rule for cutting the hand of the thief was revealed in the Holy Quran, as-sadiq wa as-sadiqa faqata'u aydiyahuma, the male and female thief cut their hands. This is a punishment for what they did, okay? And we have a narration from the Holy Prophet which says, if my daughter Fatima, listen very carefully, if my daughter Fatima, alayhi salam, if she had stolen and had been guilty of the crime of being a thief, he would have had her hand cut as well, which implies that we do not bend the law when it benefits our family. And this is a perfect example of how the law was bent in the case of Joe Biden, former President of the United States. President Donald Trump. In 2018, the Trump administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy on immigration, and under that policy, all adults crossing the border illegally were criminally prosecuted. Now, this situation resulted in families being separated without individualized hearings. Parents were not given a chance to contest the separation. Children were treated as unaccompanied minors, even though they arrived in the United States with their parents. And this raised concerns about violations of the Fifth Amendment's due process protections. See, there are laws in America that are based upon justice. However, they get skirted or overlooked, ignored when it comes to committing these crimes. Today, we cannot help but witness today ICE raids, which are unconstitutional when they bypass core protections guaranteed to all people of the U.S., regardless of their citizenship status. There have been multiple Fourth Amendment violations of unreasonable searches and seizures, such as lack of judicial warrants, mass detentions without suspicion, and excessive force. And today we know of Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother of 3, was killed by an ICE agent. And so we look at these injustices and we see them happening today. So we do not want to speak on our beloved Imam in a vacuum. George Bush, again, now these are examples of injustice in governing war and peace. Major outlets reported that the Bush administration relied on discredited intelligence about weapons of mass destruction to justify the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Critics describe this as a major injustice because the war caused massive civilian casualties and destabilization. But we know just lying about weapons of mass destruction to go into another country was a clear form of neocolonialism, to take over another country and take its resources. A Washington Post-linked academic analysis described Bush's post-9/11 rhetoric as a politics of fear that helped justify expanded military action and surveillance, raising concerns about manipulation and injustice in wartime decision-making. President Barack Obama. The Washington Post reported that Obama oversaw the largest targeted killing program in U.S. history. You may not have heard about it, but it was going on. It wasn't, the media didn't put it out there. And this included drone strikes that killed civilians. Critics argue this lacked transparency and due process. The drone strikes targeted people in multiple African nations. Under the guise of fighting terrorism, these drone strikes were allowed. Major outlets widely reported that Obama continued and expanded NSA surveillance programs, okay, where basically, your phones are tapped, whatever you say or do is being recorded. Wherever you walk, there's a camera that's recording you. These are violations of our civil liberties in the name of fighting terrorism, right? Isn't that a nice way to put it? But in reality, it erodes our freedoms. President Joe Biden, he oversaw, and we witnessed it, and he funded a genocide in occupied Palestine. Major news outlets reported that the Biden administration approved $18 billion in weapons transfers to Israel during the Gaza war. And even Gaza war is a misnomer. This wasn't a war. This was a slaughter. Okay? Continued supplying U.S.-made bombs and fighter jets used in densely populated civilian areas. He ignored or overrode internal State Department warnings that the U.S. support was enabling mass civilian casualties. Faced resignation from U.S. officials who said the policy violated American values and international humanitarian law. And President Biden failed to enforce U.S. laws requiring suspension of arms transfers when humanitarian aid is being blocked. They were blocking humanitarian aid into Gaza, in occupied Palestine. And even when they were blocking that humanitarian aid, President Biden allowed Israel to continue its atrocities and continue to supply weapons. President Donald Trump. And this is from recent history. The following injustices we know were perpetrated by President Trump in his first year in office. Okay? Venezuela, January 20th of this year will be a full year he's completed. So, Venezuela, Operation Absolute Resolve. In early January of this year, U.S. Special Forces conducted a raid in Caracas that resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. In Iran, last year, Operation Midnight Hammer on June 22nd, 2025, B-2 stealth bombers struck subterranean nuclear facilities at Fordo and Natanz using bunker buster bombs. Yemen, Operation Rough Rider. From January to May 2025, the U.S. conducted intensified airstrikes against Houthi militant bases in response to attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. And if you didn't think, or if you thought that it only happens over there, and you didn't think it could come home to us, United States cities, President Donald Trump deployed the National Guard and federal forces to several cities under the pretext of addressing crime and civil unrest. Was there civil unrest? I don't think there was. Los Angeles, June 2025, 700 Marines. These people are supposed to be used for, wars outside the United States. And 4,000 National Guard troops, which are supposed to be there to protect U.S. citizens. He deployed them into the city despite the state objecting to it. Washington, D.C., August 2025, 2,000 National Guard troops were deployed for patrols in tourist areas. October 2025 in Chicago, federalized troops were deployed as part of Operation Midway Blitz to target criminal illegal aliens. And in Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, late 2025, National Guard units were sent to these cities citing high violent crime rates. That was the pretext. As if there aren't crime rates all the time, but for some reason, he deployed federal and military troops in the National Guard. Now, I've only presented to you atrocities and injustices of the presidents. We could go further into the Congress, whether it's the House of Representatives or the Senate. Injustice prevails in this country, and therefore we need to look at solutions to those injustices. So today we turn to the justice of Imam Ali, peace be upon him. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, ruled for nearly 5 years. Okay? He was known for uncompromising justice in courts. War and administration. Even in these situations, even in the most difficult of times, justice must prevail. Because once you go for injustice because you feel that it will help resolve a greater threat, now you've opened the door to greater injustices. And I just mentioned to you presidents over the last 2+ decades, right? 2001 to present. It's about 25 years. Injustice after injustice after injustice. And not only that, the injustice becomes greater, severer. Okay? Imam Ali, he didn't show any favoritism to his family in regards to Islamic laws. An example is how Imam Ali dealt with his older brother Aqil, who had an issue with wanting more money from the public treasury. And Imam Ali prevented him from that. And there's a nice report about that incident. But it shows that Imam Ali, when it came to justice, it's not about family, it's about the law of God. If it's about the law of the nation in this country, it has to be about the law, about the Constitution. We have to stick by that Constitution. Okay? These laws have been skirted, and we have an example of Imam Ali where he is keeping justice. So, first of all, We want to talk about legal justice. In the judicial situation, there should be standards. First example is Imam Ali, his letter to Malik al-Ashtar. So when Imam Ali became the Khalifa in the year 35 after the Hijrah, there are many provinces and countries under the control of the Muslim nation. And one of those lands was Egypt, Misr. And Imam Ali chose, because when you have a Khalifa like Imam Ali and our awaited Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjallahu ta'ala Sharif, they have to utilize their knowledge and understanding, right, to choose governors who will be just in their lands they govern. So he had removed the former governor for his injustice, and he placed Malik al-Ashtar to be the governor over Egypt. Imam Ali, peace upon him, he writes in a letter to Malik. He said, then choose for judgment. We're talking about judges, a judge in the court. Choose for judgment the best of your subjects in your view. Those whom matters do not constrain. So they have to be very, very intelligent. Okay? And nothing should make them falter in judging. They do not persist in sin, committing crimes. They do not hesitate to return to the truth when they know it. Whose souls do not incline to greed, and who are not satisfied with minimal understanding when a fuller grasp is possible. And this is in Nahj al-Balagha, letter number 53. The book is widely available online in Islamic bookstores. Here, Imam Ali is giving Malik instructions to place pious, righteous men who will not be moved in their judgment by greed or bias or sin. This is very important. Today we have judges in the Supreme Court making rulings that go against reason. Today, go against reason. Why are they making these judgments? Is it because of the president? Is it because some sort of plan? See, so justice is not being implemented. Second example we have is with the public treasury. So the Muslim nation has a public treasury called Baytul Mal. Okay? The house of wealth. You call it the public treasury in today's terms. All the wealth collected by the nation is stored in this treasury. However, when Imam Ali became head of state, he found that the public treasury had been greatly misused. Like, people were taking money for personal ventures and things like that. And that public treasury is supposed to be such that you divide that wealth equally upon every single, let's say, citizen, for lack of a better term, in the nation. So that equal division, one doesn't get more than the other. That's the way it works. But you had people taking greater wealth than giving it in equally. So he said, by God, if I found that it had been used as dowries for women or to purchase slave girls, I would still reclaim that money. He would take that money back if it had been used or misused in that way. For in justice there is vastness, and whoever finds justice constricting, injustice will be even more constricting for him. That's in sermon number 15. So here Imam Ali informs that misused money from the public treasury would be returned to the public treasury. Justice is to give everyone an equal share. So if one thinks their equal share is too small, exercising injustice will be far worse to the nation, regardless. Removing unjust governors. Dismissing governors who wrong the people. In Nahj al-Balagha and other works, Imam Ali, peace upon him, writes to several governors warning or removing them for financial or physical abuse of subjects. For example, in a letter to one of his officials, he writes, by God, if Al-Hassan, that's the son of Imam Ali, if Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, both his sons, had done what you have done, they would have found no favoritism with me, nor would they obtain their desire from me until I had taken the right from them and removed the falsehood from the one who was wrong. That's in Nahj al-Balagha, letter number 41 in Al-Baladri's work. And right here we have President Trump impeached. But will he ever be impeached and removed from office? We have yet to see. Forbidding the torture and forced confession. Imam Ali stated, beware of punishing without right, for that is the act of oppressors. It is not from the sunnah that a man be seized on suspicion, nor tortured on mere accusation. And this clearly illustrates that punishing someone has a specific procedure that must be followed, and that pre-trial torture is forbidden in Islam. Muslims are forbidden to act on suspicion. This is something that we're not supposed to do. Here is a picture in Iraq during the Iraq War, and that went all around the world, viral without social media. And it was of a man being tortured with a hood on his head in Iraq, being tortured, and that became a way to get people to get America to get out of Iraq in some way. Forbidding pursuit. Now we're talking about war. We're talking about now justice in war. The first example is forbidding the pursuit of fleeing enemies. So there was a battle called the Battle of Camel. I'm not going to go into it. But in that battle, Imam Ali was faced with an internal conflict with fellow Muslims who had turned against him for one of two reasons. One was that he was accused for not seeking the murderers of the third Khalifa, Uthman. And number two is that he did not pursue nepotism, meaning he didn't give things to other people just because they supported him. He didn't do that. So they didn't like it. And so a battle happened. And in that battle, Imam Ali said, do not pursue anyone who flees. If they run away, do not pursue them. Do not finish off a wounded man. Do not violate any privacy. Do not take any property. That's in Nahj al-Balagha, Sermon 14. Our second example is the War of Siffin. This is equal treatment of wounded enemies. The Siffin is considered the first civil war in Islam. In this war, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, said, whoever among them is found wounded is as one of our wounded. We will treat him and care for him. Meaning that we're not going to mutilate and harm the wounded. We will care for them. This is, in war, you do that. You're not supposed to, commit all forms of injustice after someone has fallen. And then our third example, which is also the War of Siffin, one of the heinous actions we saw in our recent times is the cutting off of food and water from the Palestinian people during the latest genocidal aggression by the occupiers. In the war at Siffin, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he commands his soldiers, let them, meaning the people they're fighting in Siffin, let them drink from the water as we drink. We do not deny them what we do not own. The water belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how Imam Ali is teaching us in war. So in conclusion, Imam Ali, he's the model of true justice. He, peace be upon him, demonstrated a standard of justice rooted in integrity, fairness, and compassion. His leadership shows that justice must be applied universally without favoritism, oppression, or political bias. Whether in courts, governance, or war, he upheld principles that protected human dignity and rights. His example remains a timeless guide for building societies grounded in equity, accountability, and moral courage. And it is hoped that America can steer towards justice, but it's a very big uphill battle. So much has happened since. And so we look towards this justice, and we look to use our abilities to propagate that justice. And if we can enter into areas of political power, implement that justice with Allah's help. Thank you very much. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.